Welcome to the English Time Daily channel. Are you ready to improve your listening and writing skills? In this episode, we'll listen to some real-life stories that can help you practice your English by listening carefully. You can learn new vocabulary, improve your understanding, and even improve your writing skills by learning how to express ideas clearly. Before we start, remember to press the like button. If you enjoy the episode, let's get started with a question. Have you ever had a moment when you were too busy to notice something important around you? Maybe something simple like forgetting where you put your keys or missing a small but important detail at work. This happened to me a few months ago. I remember one morning I was rushing to get ready for an important meeting. My husband asked me if I had seen the car keys. I didn't even hear him at first. I was too focused on other things. Later, I found out I had left the keys in the refrigerator. Can you imagine? I was so distracted that I didn't even notice. Now, I always try to slow down in the morning, but it's hard. Life is so busy. But that day I learned a good lesson. Sometimes it's not about being fast or doing everything quickly. It's about being careful and paying attention to the small details. This story is a great way to practice your listening skills. You can hear how I explained the situation and notice how I used phrases like I was rushing and I didn't even hear him. These expressions can be useful when you talk about something you've experienced in the past. What about you? Have you ever had a moment like this when you were too busy and missed something important? Think about it for a second. You can use this story as a model to share your own experience. In English, let me share another example. Last week, my husband and I decided to go for a walk in the park. We were walking, talking, and just enjoying the quiet afternoon when we saw something funny. A dog was running around, chasing a ball, but the dog kept running in circles instead of chasing the ball. It was so funny because the dog didn't notice that the ball was right in front of him. We laughed for a long time. Afterwards, I thought about how sometimes, like the dog, we can get so focused on something that we miss the most obvious things. Have you ever done that? Maybe you were focused on work and missed a beautiful sunset, or you were talking to someone and didn't notice something important in the conversation. Listening to real-life stories like this can help you learn new ways to talk about your own experiences. It's also a good way to practice understanding what other people say in English. As you listen, pay attention to how I describe the situation, the actions, and the feelings. These are the key things that can help improve your listening skills. Let's take a moment to think about the words I used in the story when I said we were walking, talking, and just enjoying the quiet afternoon. I used some simple verbs and adjectives to describe the scene. You can practice these kinds of descriptions in your own English practice. Remember, listening and understanding real stories can help you connect to everyday situations. It's a great way to build your skills. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something like the dog chasing the ball in circles? Or have you had a moment when you missed something simple because you were focused on other things? Try to think of your own story and you can practice speaking about it later. It will help you improve your writing too when you write about these experiences. Let's dive into another story. This one is about a time when I learned something important while shopping. Have you ever been shopping and suddenly realized you forgot something important, like your wallet, or maybe you couldn't find the item you wanted? That happened to me last month. I was at the grocery store and I had a long list of things to buy. I was so focused on getting everything on my list that I didn't pay attention to the fact that I didn't have my wallet with me. I was about to pay for everything when I reached into my purse and realized I couldn't find it. I felt embarrassed. The cashier was kind, but I had to go back home to get my wallet. It was a small mistake, but it made me realize how important it is to double-check things before we go out. I didn't notice I forgot my wallet because I was so busy thinking about all the things I needed to buy. Can you think of a time when you were so focused on something that you missed? Something important. Maybe you forgot your keys. Or you couldn't find something because you were thinking about something else. It happens to everyone, but it's a good lesson to learn. You can always check the important Things before leaving home, like your wallet or phone. Now let's practice listening again. I'm going to repeat a few things I said, but this time I'll say them a little slower. Listen carefully to the words I use. I was at the grocery store, and I had a long list of things to buy. I was so focused on getting everything on my list that I didn't pay attention to the fact that I didn't have my wallet with me. By listening carefully to these sentences, you can notice how I use the past continuous tense. I was focused, I didn't pay attention. These are ways we talk about actions that were happening in the past. It's helpful to use this tenses when telling a story about something that happened before. Now, let's take a minute to think, can you use a similar sentence to describe a time when you were focused on something and missed something important? You can try using, I was doing something or I didn't notice. This can be a great way to practice your speaking and writing skills. Let me share one more example, and this one is about a day I spent with my husband at the park one afternoon. We decided to take a walk. We both needed some fresh air after a busy week. We walked around the park enjoying the sunshine, and it was so peaceful. But as we were walking, I noticed that my husband had a big smile on his face. I asked him why he was smiling, and he said, "I'm just happy to be here with you." It was a simple moment, but it made him realize how small moments can make a big difference in our lives sometimes. We get caught up in our daily routines, and we forget to enjoy the simple things. But it's important to remember that these small moments can be the ones that matter most. This is something I always try to remember, and I hope you do too. This story is a good example of how we can use simple sentences to describe a moment that made us happy. If you want to practice your writing, try writing about a happy moment in your life. Use sentences like, I was doing something I noticed, or I felt emotion. It's also a great way to practice listening as you listen to me. Think about how I'm describing my feelings and the details of the story. The more you listen to these examples, the better you'll understand how to talk about your own experiences in English. And remember, you can always practice ICE by sharing your own stories. What simple moment has made you feel happy? What small detail have you noticed that made you appreciate something more? Writing about these moments can really help you improve your writing and listening skills. Let's continue with another story. This one is about something that happened at work. Have you ever had a situation at work where you had to quickly solve a problem or make a decision? Sometimes these moments can teach us important lessons. A few weeks ago, I was working on a project with my husband. We were both busy with our jobs, and we needed to finish a task by the end of the day. But then we realized that we had made a mistake. One part of the project was missing, and we didn't have enough time to fix it before the deadline. We felt stressed because we didn't want to disappoint anyone in that moment. I had to make a quick decision. I suggested that we stay calm and focus on fixing the mistake as best as we could. We worked together, and in the end, we managed to finish the project on time. It was a stressful day, but we learned that it's important to stay calm and think clearly even when things don't go as planned. When I tell you this story, you can see that I used phrases like, I suggested we work together, and we managed to finish. These are useful phrases you can use when telling a story about a problem. You solved. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to quickly fix a problem, maybe at schoolwork or even at home? Think about a time when you had to make a decision in a hurry. How did you feel? What did you do to fix the situation? You can practice talking about it in English by using sentences like, I had to do something, or I suggested something. Now, let's listen to how I used some useful vocabulary words like deadline stress and suggested are common in situations like this where you need to solve a problem at work or school. If you hear these words often, you can start using them in your own conversations. Let's try another example, this time about a day I spent in my garden. My husband and I decided to plant some flowers and vegetables. We were both excited because we enjoy spending time outdoors, and we wanted to grow our own food. But as we started planting, I noticed something strange. The soil didn't seem to be the right type for the flowers we were planting. I had to make a decision. Quickly, I could either try to fix the soil or go to the store to get better soil. We didn't have much time, so I decided to go to the store. We bought some new soil, and when we returned, the flowers started growing. Better, it wasn't a big problem, but it was a reminder that sometimes we need to make quick decisions, even about small things. It was also a reminder that sometimes things don't always go as planned, but that's okay. Can you think of a time when you had to make a decision like this? It could be something simple like fixing a problem at home or making a choice at work. Practice speaking in English about it. You can say things like, "I'm had to decide, I chose to, or I didn't have much time." This is another great way to practice your listening skills as you listen to the story. Try to catch the phrases I used to describe my decision-making. The more you hear them, the more natural it will become to use them yourself. Now let's slow things down a bit. I'll repeat a few sentences for you to listen to carefully. My husband and I decided to plant some flowers and vegetables. But as we started planting, I noticed something strange. The soil didn't seem to be the right type for the flowers we were planting. By listening closely to these sentences, you can hear how I used words like noticed and seem. These are useful verbs to describe things we realize or feel. Practice these verbs by using them in your own stories. You can say, "I noticed something," or "it seemed like something." And remember, as you practice these sentences, you're also improving your writing skills. When you write about your own experiences, you can use similar phrases to describe what happened. Think about your own life. When was a time that you noticed something important, or when something seemed strange to you? Try to use those phrases to share your story in English. It will help you become more confident in your speaking and writing. Let's continue with another story. This one is about a time when I learned a lesson while cooking dinner. Have you ever tried to make something new in the kitchen, and it didn't turn out as you expected? Sometimes cooking can be a little tricky, especially when you are trying a new recipe. A few weeks ago, I decided to cook a new dish for my husband and me. I wanted to make a special dinner, so I chose a recipe that I had never tried before. I thought it would be easy, but when I started cooking, things didn't go as planned. The recipe said to cook the vegetables for 20 minutes, but after 20 minutes they were still not soft enough. I kept adding more time, but they didn't cook properly. I felt frustrated because I wanted everything to be perfect. In the end, we had to eat the vegetables anyway, but they weren't as good as I had hoped. I realized that sometimes things don't always turn out the way we expect. And that's okay. It's important to be patient and not get too upset when things go wrong. I learned that cooking takes practice and it's okay to make mistakes. Have you ever had a situation where something didn't go as planned? Maybe you tried to cook something, or maybe you worked on a project and faced unexpected challenges. When that happens, it's good to stay calm and keep trying. Just like I did with my dinner. You can use phrases like "I tried," "I felt frustrated," and "I learned to describe what happened now." Let's practice listening. Again, listen carefully to these sentences. I thought it would be easy, but when I started cooking, things didn't go as planned. I kept adding more time, but they didn't cook properly. Notice how I used "I thought things didn't go as planned," and "I kept adding." These phrases help explain what happened when things didn't turn out the way I expected. You can use these in your own stories to explain a problem you faced and how you tried to fix it. Now, think about your own experiences. Can you remember a time when something didn't go as planned and you had to try again? Maybe it was cooking, or maybe something else. Use phrases like "it hot," "I tried," and "I learned" to share your story in English. This practice is a great way to improve your listening skills. As you listen to how I describe my experience, pay attention to the words and phrases I use. They'll help you improve your own speaking and writing. Let me share another example. Last weekend, I went for a walk in my neighborhood. The weather was nice, and I wanted to get some fresh air. As I was walking, I saw a neighbor walking their dog. The dog was running and jumping, and it looked like it was having a great time. I stopped to say hello to my neighbor, and we started talking about the weather and how our day was going. It was a simple conversation, but it made me feel good. Sometimes it's the small conversations like this that can make our day better. Have you ever had a simple conversation with a neighbor or someone in your community? Maybe you talked about the weather, or maybe you shared something funny that happened. These kinds of conversations help us practice our English skills. You can use phrases like, I stopped to say hello, or we started talking about something. Let's practice. Listening to the sentences I just said as I was walking, I saw a neighbor walking their dog. The dog was running and jumping, and it looked like it was having a great time. Do you notice how I used I saw, and it looked like these are great phrases? To describe what you see and how you feel about something, practice using these phrases in your own English practice as you listen to these stories. You can think about similar moments in your life and practice sharing them. In English every time you tell a story, you'll get better at speaking and writing. Let's continue with another story. This one is about a small adventure I had while traveling to a new city. Have you ever visited a place where you didn't know anyone and everything felt new? It can be exciting, but also a little bit scary. A few months ago, I traveled to a city I had never been to. Before, I was visiting a friend who had recently moved there. I didn't know the area, so I was a bit nervous. The first thing I did was take a walk around the neighborhood. As I walked, I noticed the streets were very quiet and I didn't see many people outside. It was different from where I live, where the streets are busy and full of people. I decided to stop at a small cafe to relax and get something to drink. The cafe was cozy, and the people there were very friendly. I talked to the barista, and he told me about the best places to visit in the city. He even gave me a map to help me find my way around. It made me feel better, because I didn't know where to go next. This experience taught me that sometimes it's okay to feel lost or unsure in a new place, but there's always someone willing to help. And taking a moment to talk to others can make you feel more comfortable. Have you ever visited a new place and felt unsure? Maybe you were in a new town or a different country. It can be a little scary, but it's also a chance to learn and discover new things. You can talk about your experiences by saying things like, I've decided a place, I was nervous, or I talked to someone. Now let's listen to how I used some useful phrases. I decided to stop at a small cafe to relax and get something to drink. The cafe was cozy, and the people there were very friendly. Notice how I used I decided, I talked to, and the people were very friendly. These are great phrases to use when describing something you did in a new place. You can try using these phrases to talk about your own travels or experiences in a new environment. Think about a time when you visited a new place. What did you do? How did you feel? You can practice speaking about it in English, using phrases like, I decided to. I was nervous, and I talked to. Now let's talk about something many people experience starting. A new job starting. A new job can feel like a big change, right? It can be exciting, but it can also be a little overwhelming. I remember when I started my first job, I was excited but also nervous about meeting new people and learning new things. The first day was busy. I had to fill out paperwork and learn about the rules of the office. I met a few coworkers and everyone was kind and helpful. One of my coworkers showed me around the office and explained some of the tasks I would be doing, even though I didn't know everything. I felt a little better because I had someone to help me. By the end of the day, I felt more confident. I realized that starting a new job is a big change, but it's a great opportunity to learn and grow. It can take time to feel comfortable, but that's okay. We all start somewhere. Have you ever started a new job or a new school? How did you feel on your first day? It can be a little stressful, but it's a good chance to learn new things and meet new people. You can use phrases like, I was excited, I met someone, and I felt more confident to talk about your experiences. Let's listen carefully to these sentences. I was excited but also nervous about meeting new people and learning new things by the end of the day. I felt more confident. Do you hear how I used I was excited and I felt more confident? These are helpful phrases to describe your feelings when you start something new. You can use them when you talk about any new experience in your life. Think about a time when you started something new. Maybe it was a new job, a new school, or even a new hobby. Try to use these phrases to tell your story in English by listening to these stories. You're practicing important vocabulary and learning how to share. Your experiences in English keep practicing, and remember that every time you speak or listen, you're getting better. Let's move on to another story. This one is about a time when I had to organize a big event. Have you ever been in charge of organizing something like a party, a meeting, or a family event? It can be a lot of work, but also very rewarding. A few months ago, I had to organize a small gathering for some friends and family. We decided to have it at our house. At first, I thought it would be easy. Just a few people, some snacks, and a little bit of music. But as the day got closer, I realized there was much more to do. I needed to plan the food clean, the house, and figure out where everyone would sit. It felt like there were a lot of things. To remember, I decided to make a list to help me stay organized. I wrote down everything I needed to do, from buying the food to setting up the space. I also asked my husband to help me. With some of the tasks, it made things easier, and we were able to finish everything on time when the day finally arrived. Everything went smoothly. The guests had a great time, and I was relieved that the event was successful. It made me realize that organizing an event can be stressful, but with a little planning and teamwork, it can also be a lot of fun. Have you ever organized an event or party? Maybe it was a birthday party or a special gathering. What was it like? You can use phrases like I had to organize. I wrote down, and we were able to describe what you did. Let's listen to some key phrases from my story. I decided to make a list to help me stay organized. I also asked my husband to help me with some of the tasks. Notice how I decided, I wrote down, and I asked. These phrases are great for describing the steps you took to organize something. You can use them to explain what you did in your own life when you had to plan something. Think about a time when you had to organize something. What did you do to make sure everything went well? Try to use the phrases I decided to, I wrote down, and I asked to explain what happened. Now let's talk about learning a new skill. Have you ever wanted to learn something new, but you didn't know where to start? It can be tricky, but it's always possible to learn. Especially if you break it down into small steps. A few months ago, I decided I wanted to learn how to bake bread. I've always enjoyed eating fresh bread, but I had never tried making it myself. At first, I wasn't sure if I could do it, but I found a simple recipe online. I read through the instructions carefully and made sure I had all the ingredients the first time I made the bread. It didn't turn out perfectly. The dough was a bit too sticky, and the bread didn't rise as much as I hoped. But I didn't give up. I kept practicing, and over time, I learned how to make the dough just right. The next time the bread turned out better, and I felt proud of what I had learned. Learning something new can be challenging, but it's also very rewarding. You stick with it and practice. You can improve over time. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because that's how you learn. Have you ever learned a new skill? Maybe it was cooking a sport or even learning a new language. It's always exciting to learn something new, and the more you practice, the better you get. You can use phrases like, I decided, I learned, and I didn't give up to talk about your experiences. Let's listen to these phrases. I decided, I wanted to learn how to bake bread the first time I made the bread. It didn't turn out perfectly, but I didn't give up. Do you hear how I used I decided? It didn't turn out, and I didn't give up. These phrases help tell the story of how I learned something new. You can use them when you talk about your own experiences with learning something. Think about something you've learned recently. Maybe it's a new skill or a new activity. How did you feel when you first started? Use these phrases to share your story. In English, learning new skills is a great way to practice your English. You can talk about how you started, what challenges you faced, and how you kept going. The more you talk about your experiences, the better your speaking and writing will become. Keep practicing and you'll continue to improve. Let's dive into another story. This one is about a time when I had to fix something at home. Have you ever had to fix something in your house, like a broken chair, a leaky tap, or even your phone? Sometimes Small problems can turn into big challenges if we don't know how to solve them. A few weeks ago, I noticed that one of the chairs in our living room was wobbly. It was a little annoying because whenever we sat on it, it made a strange noise at first. I thought maybe I could just ignore it. But then I remembered that the chair could become even more unstable if I didn't fix it, so I decided to try and repair it myself. I didn't know much about fixing furniture, but I thought I could at least try. I looked online for some advice and found a simple video showing how to fix a wobbly chair. The video explained how to check the legs, tighten the screws, and even use wood glue if necessary. I followed the steps carefully, and after a few minutes of work, the chair was much more stable. It felt good to fix something on my own, even though it was a small task. It made me feel proud that I didn't need to call someone else to help. It was a reminder that with a little research and patience, we can solve problems ourselves. Have you ever fixed something around the house? Maybe it was a small task like cleaning the kitchen or fixing a broken appliance. You can describe your experience by saying things like, "I noticed, I decided, and I followed the steps." These phrases will help you explain what you did and how you felt during the process. Let's listen to a few key phrases. I decided to try and repair it myself. I followed the steps carefully, and after a few minutes of work, the chair was much more stable. Notice how I used I decided, I followed, and the chair was much more stable. These are helpful phrases to describe the steps you took to fix something. You can use them when talking about any repair or small project you've done at home. Think about a time when you had to fix something. What did you do? How did it feel when you solved the problem? Use these phrases to share your experience in English. Now let's move on to another story that many people can relate to: making a big decision. Have you ever had to make a decision that felt important, like choosing between two options or deciding what to do next in life? A few months ago, I had to make a big decision about moving to a new city. I had been living in the same city for a few years and I was comfortable there, but my job offered me a great opportunity in another city, and I had to decide whether or not to accept the offer. At first, I felt unsure about moving. I liked my current home, my friends, and the places I was familiar with, but I also knew that moving to a new city could open up new opportunities. I spent a lot of time thinking about it and talking to my husband for advice together. We made a list of the pros and cons of moving. After thinking it through, I decided to accept the job offer. Moving was a big change, but it turned out to be a great decision. I found new places to explore and met new people. It was a reminder that sometimes making a big decision requires careful thought, and some advice from others have. You ever had to make a big decision? Maybe it was choosing a job, deciding where to live, or picking a course to study. It's not always easy, but it's important to think carefully and talk to others. If you need help, let's listen to these key phrases. I decided to accept the job offer. I spent a lot of time thinking about it and talking to my husband for advice. Notice how I used I decided. I spent time, and I talked to someone. These are useful phrases when describing how you made a decision. You can use them to talk about your own important choices. Think about a decision you've made recently. How did you make it? Who did you talk to for advice? You use these phrases to tell your story in English. Making decisions can be challenging, but talking about them in English helps you practice important phrases and vocabulary. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become when describing your experiences. Let's move on to another story this time. It's about a situation where I had to be patient. Have you ever had to wait for something important? Like waiting for an answer to a question, or waiting for a package to arrive? Sometimes waiting can be really difficult, especially when we're excited or anxious. A while ago, I ordered a new phone online. I had been using my old phone for a long time and it was starting to have problems, so I decided to buy a new one. I was really excited to get it, because I needed a phone that worked better for my job and personal life. The website said the phone would arrive in 3 days, but after 3 days there was no package. I checked the tracking number and saw that the phone had been delayed. It would take another week for the phone to arrive. At first, I felt frustrated because I was really looking forward to it. But then I reminded myself that there was nothing I could do to make it arrive faster. I decided to be patient and wait. Finally, after a week, the phone arrived. It was just as I had hoped, and I was very happy with it. I realized that sometimes we have to wait for things, and being patient makes the process easier. It was a small lesson in learning to trust that things will happen in their own time. Have you ever had to wait for something you really wanted? Maybe it was a gift, a new item, or even waiting. For something important to happen, you can describe the experience by saying things like, I decided to wait. I reminded myself, and it took longer than I expected. These phrases will help you explain how you handled the situation. Let's listen to these. Key phrases from the story: I decided to be patient and wait. It took longer than I expected, but finally the phone arrived. Notice how I used, I decided it took longer. And finally, these are good phrases to use when explaining how you dealt with a situation that required patience. You can use them when talking about times when you had to wait for something important. Think about a time when you had to wait for something. How did you feel during that time? What helped you stay patient? Try using these phrases to tell your story in English. Now let's talk about a time when I helped someone out. Have you ever helped a friend or family member with something important? It can feel good to offer help, especially easily when someone really needs it. A few weeks ago, my friend called me because she needed help moving some furniture in her new apartment. She'd just moved in and was trying to arrange everything, but the furniture was too heavy for her to move on her own. She asked if I could come over and help her. At first, I wasn't sure if I had time, because I had a lot of things to do that day, but then I remembered how much she had helped me in the past. I decided to go over and help her. When I arrived, we worked together to move the furniture. It wasn't easy, but we laughed and talked while we worked, which made it more enjoyable. After we finished, my friend thanked me, and I felt happy that I could help. It wasn't a big task, but it made a difference to her. Helping others can be a great way to build stronger relationships and make people feel supported. Have you ever helped someone with something? Maybe it was helping with moving, cooking, or just giving advice. You can talk about it using phrases like, I decided to help. I worked together, and it made a difference. These are useful for explaining your experience. Let's listen to these phrases. I decided to go over and help her. We worked together, and it made a difference to her. Notice how I used, I decided we worked together, and it made a difference. These phrases help explain how we can offer support to others. You can use them when talking about times you helped someone or work together on a task. Think about a time when you helped someone. What did you do and how did it make you feel? Try using these phrases to describe your experience in English. Helping others is a great way to practice English. You can use it as an opportunity to describe your actions and feelings in detail. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become using these phrases in real conversations. Let's move on to another example this time. I want to talk about a situation where I had to learn something new. Have you ever had to learn something completely new, like a new skill or a new subject at school or work? It can feel challenging at first, but with time and practice, it becomes easier. A few months ago, I decided to learn how to cook. I had always enjoyed eating good food, but I never really knew how to make it myself. I thought it was time to start learning, because cooking at home is often healthier and cheaper than eating out. I started with simple dishes like pasta and soup. The first time I tried to cook pasta, I didn't know the right amount of water to use, and the pasta stuck together. It wasn't perfect, but I learned from my mistake. The next time I made pasta, it turned out much better. Slowly, I started to learn more recipes and improve my cooking skills. Learning to cook wasn't easy, but it was rewarding. Now I can cook several meals that I really enjoy, and I feel proud of the progress I've made. It reminds me that learning something new requires patience and practice. It's okay if things don't work perfectly at first. What matters is that you keep trying. Have you ever had to learn something new, like cooking, driving, or even learning a new language? When you talk about your learning experiences, you can use phrases like, I decided to learn, I started with, and I made progress. These phrases are helpful when explaining how you learned something. Let's listen to these. Phrases from the story I decided to learn how to cook. I started with simple dishes like pasta over time. I made progress and learned more recipes. Notice how I used I decided I started with, and I made progress. These phrases are great for describing how you learn something new. You can use them when talking about your own learning experiences too. Think about a time when you learned something new. How did you feel at the beginning? What steps did you take to improve? Try using these phrases. To share, your experience in English learning new things can be difficult, but it's also a great opportunity to practice English. The more you practice describing your experiences, the more comfortable you'll feel with speaking and writing in English. Keep practicing, and you'll keep improving. Now let's talk about something many people have to do from time to time: cleaning the house. Have you ever had a big cleaning project, like organizing a room or cleaning your entire home? It's something that can be both tiring and satisfying. At the same time, last weekend, I decided to clean my kitchen. It had been a while since I did a deep cleaning, so it was starting to feel a bit messy. The counters had crumbs, and the floor needed a good scrub. I decided to take my time and clean everything carefully. I started by wiping down all the surfaces, then I cleaned the stove and sink. After that, I organized the cabinets and threw away any old food. It took a few hours, but by the end, the kitchen looked so much better. I felt proud of the work I had done. Cleaning is something that many of us do regularly. It's a simple task, but it's also something that can be made easier by taking it step by step. When you clean your house, you can describe it using phrases like, I decided to clean. I started by, and it took time, but it was worth it. These phrases will help you explain your cleaning process. Let's listen to these phrases. I decided to clean my kitchen. I started by wiping down all the surfaces, and it took a few hours, but it was worth it. Notice how I used I decided to clean. I started by, and it took time, but it was worth it. These phrases are useful when talking about tasks you do around the house. You can use them to explain how you handle cleaning or organizing. Tasks: think about the last time you cleaned something in your home. What steps did you take? How did you feel after you finished? Use these phrases to tell your story in English.